This video is to help all my percussionists who are getting ready for their end of year auditions. Remember that the first phase, recording number 1, is going to be a major scale and a chromatic scale. And for percussion, that's always going to be 2 octave scales at least. Now you're on bell kits at home, and I saw a bell kit at Schmidt's Music when I went by there maybe 2 weeks ago to pick something up. And I saw, oh, A flat has 2 octaves. That's perfect. So you can still do 2 octave scales from home on your bell kits. That's going to be a concert A flat major scale. And then your chromatic scale is also going to start on the A flat note, and it's going to be 2 octaves. Recording number 2, the second half of your audition, is going to be the prepared piece. Remember that you as percussionists have to send a good recording of the snare prepared piece and a version of the mallet prepared piece. As percussionists, I'm trying to grow you and raise you to be a part of percussion culture, and that is being well versed in a little of everything. You've got to be able to dabble as percussionist, and you can't just be a mallet player or just be a snare player. You need to be able to tune the timpani and be able to sight read on mallets. So you are going to be playing both of those parts. Remember that you must perform all measures. The goal tempo is 120 beats per minute if you're able to. And make sure you pay attention to the key, accidentals, unusual rhythms, articulations, dynamic, style, etc. Now, on this point of what I've listed at the bottom, page 48, go there in the book. Some of these items, they've got page numbers. It'll show you where to go find that in the book. If you can't find it in the book, in the back of the book, then just go back through your Essential Elements Book 1, go through and just study back through it until you find that. A couple of notes on the right side of the screen. Remember that this is only 6th and 7th grade students. My 8th grade students who are moving on, you're getting a free pass this year and you do not have to perform this. Number 2, the scales can be sent separately. So if you want to find your best recording of the major scale, and on a separate recording, your best recording of the chromatic scale, send them to me separately. That's fine. Please do not stress about trying to play them perfectly back to back. Number 3, percussion, snare, and mallet prepared piece can be sent separately as well. That's going to be, 2 minutes of playing and you need to move stations. So I'm perfectly fine with those being sent as separate recordings so that you can reset, get engaged, and focus on that other instrument, that other part. All right, points 4 and 5. Scales are now due by May 10th, and the prepared piece is now due by May 24th. I pushed this back because I don't need as much time to grade. It gives you more time to have a good audition at the end of the year, and it gave me time to put out these videos per instrument section to help you guys out. So with that said, let's move on to your practice session. All right, let's get into the major scales. And before we do that, I want you to look at your menu options in SmartMusic. For those of you that have the accounts, tracks, that's where we are right now. That's all your playback functions. My takes, if you record one, it's going to show up here in this drop down menu. You can delete it or you can save it. That's how you send your pass offs to me. So you have to play around with that under my takes. Assessment, you can turn on show assessment. You can toggle that on or off. Loop is a handy practice tool where you could set it to repeat one measure, a few measures, or a whole song. You could just get it to loop. As soon as it gets to the end, it'll loop again, or you can have the click off in between. So that's really handy for practicing one portion where you're struggling. Display options. This is stuff on how it's presented. I have the highlight measure turned on by default for you guys so that you see where you are on the screen. The beat cursor, I like that, so you're seeing the steady beat as you play, but you could also change it to flow or the actual rhythm, or you could turn it to no cursor. You can turn that off. So you have some settings in there that you can play around with. This is your tempo. You can make it go faster, slower. You've got a tuner right here. You guys don't need that, but the other instruments use that. Though this would be good if you're curious to see how the computer's picking up your bell kit, because a lot of you are struggling right now where you're sending me pass-offs and the computer is just red, red, red. But when I listen to it, I hear that it's the correct pitches. So you could play around with that and kind of diagnose which notes are coming up correctly or incorrectly on your instrument versus on the computer. You can toggle the movements and the instrument on and off. That's another setting. And then this is your count off. So you can actually change your count off to be shorter or longer. So if it's taking you too long from when you hit the play button to get over to your instrument, you could actually set it to an 8 count click off. So you have a little bit more time. So you can change that setting. I tried setting it down to 2 because I'm an older player, but I couldn't hit the start fast enough or record and enter and get the horn to my face, like when I was working on baritone last week. So I went back to 4 counts, like, okay, I'll be a good little band person and have a good embouchure, and I'm ready, I'm set, you know, have your sticks ready. So those are your quick settings there if you're playing around in SmartMusic. Now let's get on to these scales. I'm gonna show you the 1 octave scales just for practice sake. But when you perform and send me your recordings, percussionists, you know it's a 2 octave scale every time. So here's what the 2 octaves looks like on the major scale and 2 octaves chromatic scale. Now I know this is chaos. You're used to just playing it by sight on your instrument, and that's okay. If you don't need to look at this piece of paper right here, that's okay. You need to know what those notes are. You have to be able to read those pitches and those accidentals. But if you already have it memorized, committed to memory, that's awesome. You're a step ahead of the wind players. So just know that you've got to perform 2 octave scales for me. But for practice sake, we're going to do this as well so that you can make sure your hands are correct, that you're going right, left, right, that you're alternating. And on the chromatic scale too, right, left, right, left, right, left, right, left, right. Remember how the pattern's gonna flip flop as you go across the keyboard, that kind of stuff on the percussion instrument. So let's see if you can play this 80 beats per minute, 1 octave. That's a pretty cozy tempo. All right, so let's kick it up. 90 beats per minute. And somewhere between 90 and 100, I think that's a good audition tempo. If you don't have a time requirement like the all-state auditions, somewhere between 90 and 100 is good. So here's 100. And if you feel good about that, then just keep watching this video, and then let's jump right into the 2 octave scale. Now again, I don't expect you to be staring at the screen reading every single note. You've got to be able to ID it. If I point and I say, what is that note? And you say, oh, that's D, I'm going to be mad. That's a G. But as long as you can follow along, you can play it correctly on the keyboard, that's great. Because I know how percussion is. So as long as you can read it, but I've already committed it to memory, then you're golden. As long as you know where those flats are on the keyboard and you can do your work, but you also, if I asked you, you could call out those note names correctly, B flat, E flat, A flat, D flat, then we're good. All right, so here's 2 octaves, starting a little slow, a little under tempo. And the pattern has to keep going. If you start on the right hand, then you've got to keep going, and you're going to hit that octave and you're going to keep going. And then you're going to come back down, and then you're going to come back down. And the same with the arpeggio. Your hands should be hitting the same notes with the same hands on the way up, on the way down, on the arpeggio, on the way up, on the way down. All right, so enough talking. Here we go. right, bump it up a little bit if you're feeling good about that. Here's 90 beats per minute. All right, and good audition tempo. Here is 100 beats per minute. All right, moving on to your chromatic scale. Here's the 1 octave one just for practice sake. Ooh, and I noticed, look at that. E double flat, B double flat. I'm so sorry that those were put in there. So that's a B flat and an A natural and then an A flat. So you take that note, okay, this would be just regularly a B natural. When we put a flat in front of it, it becomes B flat, and then if you put another flat, it lowers it another half step. So I'm really sorry. I'm talking to my middle school students and you're seeing double flats. I'm so sorry about that. But look at your fingering chart in your book or on the EE website, or you know, if you look at this, you're just gonna have to kind of memorize it, or if you could figure out how to print it out, then you could write some notes on it, I guess. Because that's a little confusing for young players. Okay, 90 beats per minute. One thing to be careful about, when you get to the top note, there's only one top note. You're only going to hit A flat one time. You see how after it, there's a G, before it, there's a G. Some of you are still hitting A flat, or you're putting a quarter note right here. They're all going to be eighth notes, and this note is just hit one time, and you come right back down the scale. All right, 100 beats per minute. Right, and then here's how it will need to be performed: 2 octaves, and we're going to try it at 80 beats per minute, see if you can keep up. Here we go. All right, bump it up a little bit, 90 beats per minute. All right, and up to tempo, quote unquote, 100 beats per minute. All right, moving on. Snare drum. When I look at the snare drum prepared piece in SmartMusic, I turn the accompaniment down and have the snare all the way up so that you can hear the snare drum over all the other wind instruments. And then I tend to turn the metronome down a little bit because it's pretty loud. However, if you're playing on a real snare drum, you may want the metronome all the way up, and you may want to, if you've got a Bluetooth speaker at home that you can connect your device to, or maybe headphones to get it closer to your ear. Just be mindful when you put stuff in your ear that you don't crank it up to be louder than the snare drum. I don't want you guys to have hearing damage. So just be mindful. You want to be able to hear your music with the snare drum, but it's challenging because the snare drum is loud. And those bell kits are pretty loud too. They're pretty ringy, ding, 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 pretty loud. But that's how I adjust the settings here so that the snare part comes through, because you want to be able to hear these rolls. Now, I always tell you on the glockenspiel and the bell kit, do not roll. I always say that. However, this year's awesome piece that I wrote for you guys, I put rolls left and right. There are rolls in here. Let's see what I put on the marimba piece. Yeah, on the marimba piece. So if you roll on that bell kit, it had better sound even. Otherwise, you just need to play your time note and move on. You can't go. It's got to be. It's got to sound like ringing on the triangle. It's got to sound like sparkle if you're going to attempt to recreate a marimba roll on these little bell kits. So just be mindful of that, it's got to be real even. You need to practice rolling. It can't just be you slapping unevenly at those bars. It's got to be a good roll. Practice pad or snare drum, it's going to have the same kind of bounce. So you're going to play this just like you would in class, whether it's on a practice pad or a snare drum. All right, so with that said, let's get into it. Here's the slower tempo, 110 beats per minute. I'm gonna let it play out for you. I put, or in transition coming off of finale into here, there is a different roll right here. Ignore that. Make all of your rolls like this. Okay, there is a difference whether you have 2 bars or 3 bars. There's a difference in the performance. And I will share the flyer with you guys that gave a good description on how to process and perform the rolls so that they are different. And if you listen closely, you can hear measure 1 and measure 3 don't sound the same. So just ignore that. And I'll get in here. I put a note to come in here and fix that. Because they should all be the exact same roll. There shouldn't just, I'm not trying to trick you guys by putting one roll that's different. You know, oh, there's a closed roll, open roll, you know, multiple buffs, single buffs. No. Not trying to do that to you. All right, here's 120 beats per minute. All right, do you think I have a future as a percussion writer? Let me know. Let me know. I spent a lot of time working on this, trying to add little things. I went and looked at snare music and the scores from this year, because hopefully you recognize some of this music. And I was like, let me write a really, really good snare part that's really actually like snare music they would see in their concert music or audition music or all county music, what have you. All right, so let's go on to the mallet part, and I'm gonna play it at 120 beats per minute. So if you have to walk a ways and go reset, you just need to pause this video. So let's move on. Ding, 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 ding. So some of this doesn't sound as good as it does in finale. These rolls sound kind of derpy. Ding, ding, ding. It should be a nice fast roll. Keep your mallet slow if you're going to do it on the bell kit. I have staccato markings in here. That's a wind player thing, and I just left it on the marimba part. Just play your part. You need to pay attention for accents. That's a percussion thing. So this legato marking that where they play long and this slur marking, these are wind player things, but I just left it in there because every once in a while you might see some of the wind markings, and so I just left it. I just thought it would be good to just kind of expose you to it a little bit so you'd see it. But just know that what I've taught you this year, using a good downstroke for these accents, that's percussion notation. And then this, you know, you may, as you get older, you may see a really old piece of music that there may be some of the wind notation or string notation may be in the band parts. Sometimes that stuff carries over. Every once in a while you might see something like that. So I just put it there. But don't let it influence your thinking too much. And I turned the accompaniment down a little bit because I couldn't hear the mallet part. And then when I backed it off a little bit, it's like, oh, there it is. All right, 120 beats per minute. All right, well, there you have it. Your lesson's a little longer than the other kids because you got more stuff to play and to practice on. So I hope that helps you guys, and good luck to all you 6th and 7th graders on your end of your auditions. Bye.